One day the killer was on the mission to kill businessman, but view was blocked by the girl, and he was trained to move the scope to the target, but the instinct. The killer realized that this would not work, so he quickly stabilized his mind and then looked at the watch. The heart rate was 65. Killer loaded the gun and concentrated his attention and ready to kill the businessman. Killer pulled the trigger, but at the critical moment, the bullet hit the girl instead of the businessman. Then killer hurried to get another shot. Then suddenly security staff arrived. Security found his shooting point and quickly pulled up the curtain. Killer quickly took the gun and ready to quickly get off the building. Start his bike. When the police came, killer and over here, the killer is destroying all the evidence and threw the equipments, and the police were after him. Then he came to a toilet and took off his clothes and then washed his body. He even shaved his beard carefully to change himself. Everything was done perfectly. Then killer walked again out clean and smooth before he went in. He took out the handgun to eliminate the fingerprints and threw into the trash. But when he passed the security check, he found a police dog staring at him. But killer has cleaned up the smell on his body, and he got scared of the dog. So he decided to give up the flight and turned to the bathroom and wiped her skin. Then bought another flight, but when he was about to board, the killer called his boss and told him everything, that he failed this time. Killer pulled out the SIM card and broke the phone to prevent himself from being tracked, but even so, killer got on the plane. He kept looking around. He found that the one cop seemed to be watching him, so killer decided to took out another fake identity and handled the mid-flight transfer coincidentally, but the cop also handled the transfer and two met in the same waiting room. The killer realized that he was being followed, and he also canceled this flight. Stayed at the airport hotel and ordered a dinner. It was determined that after the waiter carefully stood by the door, but killer was not really hungry but needed some weapons. He put the glass on the door handle and then pushed the plate close to the door so that when the door was pushed open, the glass cup could fall onto the plate and make a noise. Then killer took the knife and sat on the chair and turned off the light. And waiting for next morning. Fortunately, the next morning, he arrived in another city. Killer still did not relax. He kept changing routes and was highly cautious not to cooperate with any vehicle. After a whole day of walking around, killer finally went home. He found two big footprints on the ground, which were definitely not his wife's shoes, and there were a bunch of cigarette next to the footprints. This means that someone danger of his house, but a killer immediately realized that someone was going to assassinate him, so he quickly took out his gun and ran into the house, but he found that there were also obvious footprints on the ground near the house, which means that the man danger enter in the house. Killer ran inside with his back to the inside of the house, but his wife was nowhere to be seen. Killer immediately ran to the bedroom, but it was full of blood on the wall. Killer quickly called his wife and see that his wife had been seriously injured. Wife said the man suddenly broke in and knife him in the head. The killer found out that it was all ordered by his boss because he hadn't killed the businessman. Then the killer decided that he would kill everyone in his boss's entire gang. Killer listened and immediately transferred his wife to a private hospital for safety. Then he went home and started digging. As a special killer, he hid a lot of emergency equipment at home. These wives don't even know that after taking the necessary weapons. Then killer dressed up as a tourist and drove up the street. Look, Carl did not get out of the car, but quietly wrote down his boss company name. At night, when there were few people, he went to the company and pretended to be in a hurry to ask questions. Then he stepped back and put on his mask. The manager was shot as soon as he opened the door. Finally, killer entered the control room and checked all of the records. He found that a taxi had arrived near his house 2 days ago. He withdrew from the search page and found the corresponding owner. According to the vehicle information, he was a young boy. He had obtained all the useful information. The next morning, killer saw the boy driving the green taxi. He immediately followed it up. After a while, he pretended to be a passenger and got in the taxi, but killer pulled out a gun. The boy brain was flying. Oh, shit. The boy hurriedly handed over the wallet, but killer was not interested in this. So, the killer asks him, "You came to my house 2 days ago, right?" The boy stuck an hour later. The boy replies, "No, I don't know anything." The killer threatens him. Although the boy told him those two people killed your wife, the more he said, the faster he died. Killer don't know who these two people are, but his boss must know because only the boss in the same line knows where his family lives. In the end, killer boarded the plane with a fake ID card and came to new city to search him. Killer have 6 warehouses in this city with full of equipment, pistol, bullets, and a new passport. Killer picked everything one by one. Killer had to dress up as a cleaner and wait outside, waiting for the opportunity to rush in. A courier opened the door and entered. Killer quickly pulled out the ready-made trash can and ran up with him. The other courier boy got off the elevator on the 4th floor and killer followed him out because the boss lived on the 4th floor. Killer began to count to doors closed, so he had to get into this door and have to see the door open in 7 seconds. Killer hurried over to sneak a peek to see was the boss's secretary, but the courier boy came out. Killer had moved to the faucet and pretended to be drinking water. The courier boy didn't care and just opened the door and left. Killer left the trash outside and only took a gun and a toolbox to get in. Then then secretary was too terrified. But killer target was not him. He took out the rope and asked the secretary to tie the old man to the chair, and then tie himself to the bathroom when killer closed the door. And the killer tells him about his wife and mission, and he asks about those two people. The old man says, "I don't know anything about them." Then he took out the gun and stabbed his computer with a steel nail to scare him. The old man said that the information was stored in the computer this time. Killer doesn't believe this kind of nonsense. Then he took the gun if 3 steel nails are stuck in the chest and can't be pulled out. The old man said, "Even if you kill me, I will still not tell you anything about them." The old man fell to the ground in pain. The next moment he died. Killer didn't panic and pushed in the trash can outside and put the old man in. The scene was cleaned up, and then he opened the door of the bathroom when the secretary was already softened and begged him to spare his life. Killer released the secretary was innocent, and the killer takes him along with him, and the secretary said, "I know who killed your wife. One's name is Biowa and the other's name is Edward." The killer had found 2 phone numbers in the old man's office, which contained details about the 2 people. The secretary thought he would let himself go, but when he got down the stairs, killer quickly took action and broke the secretary's neck. This kind of death looks like a corpse falling off a building, and killer pulled the old man's body. Then he threw both of their bodies into the sea for safety reasons. Then he washed the car thoroughly and then changed the plate and set out to look for the road. He was more suitable to be a hunter than to be a prey to others. When he arrived at the destination, he rented a car with a false identity and went to when he reached their house, finding that Biao had a big wolf dog. Then he bought some steak, sleeping pills, and malt wine. At night, killer greeted him with their dog and soaked malt wine and sleeping pills. The dog ignored him, and then killer entered through the front door in a panic. But as soon as he walked into the room, Biao started to attack him. Killer was stunned by a blunt. Biao's muscles. It's obvious that he's a professional. Couldn't resist the fire and quickly ran into the room and found the gun at the bottom of the bed. At that moment, Biao just caught up with him at the door, but the next second killer managed to kill Biao. The gunshot woke up the dog and he realized that he was to danger. The dog rushed into the room and saw the dead owner. The dog was about to bite him, but killer jumped out of nowhere, and then he lit the torch and threw it at the house. Although the dog is a witness, killer believes he won't say a word more. The killer's target now was Edward. Cleaned himself and pretended to go to the cotton festival. After locking the target, he followed him all the way and found that after the Edward went to the Western restaurant, killer went in boldly. He took advantage of the cotton festival's boyfriend to go to the bathroom and sat in his place and quickly took out his gun. He knew that he would die tonight, so he asked for the last dinner. And as soon as the cotton festival ended, when Edward stepped outside, the killer suddenly shot him without saying a word.